sound still echoes in my mind. Not the roar of the crowd, not the praise of critics, but the quiet moment of realization that changed everything. I was alone in my cocoon, surrounded by the tools of my craft, wooden dummies, mirrors reflecting my every move, the sweat-soaked mats that had absorbed thousands of hours of my labor. And in that moment of perfect stillness, I understood the truth that had been hiding in plain sight all along. Your greatest battle isn't fought under spotlights. It's fought in darkness, in silence, when no one is watching. There's no one to impress, no one to defeat but yourself. I want to tell you something that took me decades to understand. Something I didn't learn from any master or ancient text. I learned it through blood, through failure, through moments when my body and mind were pushed beyond what I thought possible. Listen carefully. The journey I'm about to share with you isn't just about fighting or physical training. It's about the war that rages within you every moment of every day. A war most people never recognize they're fighting, let alone winning. When I was a young man in Hong Kong, fierce and full of fire, I thought mastery meant defeating every challenger who stood before me. I trained relentlessly, pushing my body to extremes, perfecting techniques until they became second nature. I won fight after fight, collecting victories like trophies. But one evening, after defeating yet another opponent, I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no peace, no sense of achievement, only emptiness. All those victories, and yet something essential was missing. That night, I couldn't sleep. I went to my training room and stood before the mirror, looking not at my techniques or my physical form, deeper, into the eyes of the man staring back at me. And I asked myself a question that would change everything. Who are you fighting against, really? The answer hit me with more force than any blow I'd ever received. I wasn't fighting against others at all. Every punch, every kick, every moment of training, I was fighting against myself, against my own limitations, my own fears, my own ego. You know this truth too, don't you? When you're working late into the night, pushing yourself beyond exhaustion, who are you really trying to prove something to when you feel that burning need to succeed, to achieve, to overcome? Whose expectations are you really trying to meet? Society has programmed us to believe that mastery means domination over others. But true mastery, the kind that transforms not just your actions but your very, comes from domination over yourself. Over the voices that tell you cannot, should not, will not. Over the fear that freezes you in place when opportunity arrives. Over the doubt that whispers in your ear at the moment of truth. Let me tell you about the 3 inner opponents that every warrior must face. I didn't discover these opponents in any dojo or training hall. I discovered them in moments of quiet reflection, in the space between thoughts, in the mirror of my own consciousness. The first opponent is fear. Not the healthy fear that keeps you alive in dangerous situations, but the paralyzing fear that keeps you from truly living. This fear doesn't protect you, it imprisons you. It's the voice that says, you're not ready yet, you'll make a fool of yourself. Better to be safe than sorry. I remember the day I was offered my first major role in Hollywood. Everything I had worked for was within reach. But that night, fear visited me like an old enemy. They'll reject you, it whispered. You're too different, too Asian, too controversial. Stay where you're comfortable. Stay where you're safe. Do you know what power it takes to silence that voice? To step into uncertainty when every instinct screams for safety? That is the first battle of true mastery. Not against an external opponent, but against the fear that would keep you small. The second opponent is more subtle, more dangerous. It's doubt. Not the rational questioning that leads to wisdom, but the chronic uncertainty that erodes your foundation from within. Doubt doesn't strike you head on. Circles around you, looking for cracks in your armor, vulnerabilities in your stance. Even after I had achieved success, after I had proven myself time and again, doubt remained my constant companion. Maybe you just got lucky, it would whisper. Maybe next time they'll discover you're a fraud. Doubt is patient. It waits for moments of fatigue, for times when your guard is down, and then it strikes. Not to defeat you outright, but to make you defeat yourself. How many dreams have you abandoned because of doubt? How many opportunities have slipped through your fingers because at the critical moment, you hesitated? To overcome doubt is not to eliminate it entirely, that's impossible, but to act despite its presence. To acknowledge its voice without giving it power over your decisions. But the third opponent, this is the most dangerous of all. It's ego, not simple pride or self-confidence, but the false identity we construct around our achievements and abilities. Ego is the voice that says, I have arrived. I have nothing more to learn. My way is the only way. I've seen fighters, business people, artists, all fall to this opponent. The moment they believe they have mastered their craft is the moment they begin to decline. Ego closes your mind when it should be open. It makes you rigid when you should be fluid. It transforms confidence into arrogance, skill into stagnation. I nearly lost everything to ego. After my early successes, I began to believe my own legend. I stopped listening, stopped learning, stopped growing. I became so attached to my own methods that I couldn't see their limitations. It wasn't until I suffered a severe back injury, an injury that nearly ended my career, that I was forced to confront this opponent. Lying in a hospital bed, unable to move, all my physical prowess stripped away, I had to face a terrifying question. Who am I without my abilities? What remains when everything I've identified with is taken away? This is the crucial battle. The battle to separate your true self from the achievements, titles, and capabilities you've accumulated. To recognize that you are not your victories or your defeats. You are not your skills or your failures. You are something deeper, more fundamental, more enduring. Now, let me share with you the weapons I've discovered for combating these inner opponents. Techniques not found in any traditional training manual, forged through years of inner and outer combat. For fear, the weapon is action, not reckless action, but deliberate, conscious movement in the face of uncertainty. Fear grows in stillness and diminishes in motion. Each step you take into feared territory weakens fear's grip on you. I developed a practice I call a daily dare. Each morning I would identify one action that frightened me, not physically but psychologically. Speaking a difficult truth, attempting a new technique, reaching out to someone I admired. Then, before my mind could generate excuses, I would do it immediately. The key is not the scale of the action, but its direction, directly into what frightens you, like stepping into the path of an oncoming punch, rather than retreating from it. This doesn't eliminate fear, but it changes your relationship with it. Fear becomes not a wall that blocks your path, but a door you can choose to walk through. For doubt, the weapon is evidence. Not external validation, but the tangible record of your own growth and capability. Doubt thrives on selective memory. It helps you forget your successes while magnifying your failures. I kept what I called a victory journal, not a record of competitions won, but moments when I had overcome my own limitations. Times when I had pushed beyond what I thought possible, evidence not of my superiority over others, but of my capacity to transcend my previous self. When doubt would creep in before a performance or challenge, I wouldn't try to suppress it. Instead, I would open this journal and remind myself, you have been here before. You have faced the impossible before, and you have prevailed. Your mind will always generate doubts. That's its nature. The goal isn't to silence this voice, but to balance it with the equally true voice of your capabilities, proven through experience and recorded as evidence. I developed a ritual I call beginning mind. Before any training session, any creative endeavor, any important meeting, I would consciously empty myself of preconceptions. I would say to myself, I know nothing. I am a student. I am here to learn. This practice saved my career after my injury. Unable to rely on my usual physical abilities, I had to reimagine everything. My training, my fighting style, even my philosophy of movement. If I had remained attached to what I had been, I would have been finished. But by emptying myself of ego's attachments, I created space for reinvention. Let me be clear, emptiness doesn't mean erasing your knowledge or skills. It means holding them lightly, being willing to set them aside to discover something new. It means recognizing that expertise can become a cage if it hardens into certainty. These three weapons, action against fear, evidence against doubt, emptiness against ego, form the foundation of inner mastery. But they are not techniques to be applied mechanically. They are practices to be embodied, principles to be lived. When I created Jeet Kune Do, people mistook it for just another fighting style. But my intention was never to create a new system of techniques. It was to create a new approach to mastery itself, one based not on rigid adherence to forms, but on personal liberation and authentic expression, using no way as way, having no limitation as limitation. This wasn't just a catchy phrase. It was a direct challenge to traditional approaches to mastery that emphasized conformity over creativity, imitation over innovation. The highest form of mastery isn't technical perfection. It's the ability to express yourself honestly, completely, without the artificial boundaries of style or convention. But this kind of expression isn't possible until you've conquered the inner opponents we've discussed. As long as you're enslaved by fear, doubt, and ego, your expression will always be distorted, limited, incomplete. This brings us to water, my most famous metaphor, yet also my most misunderstood. When I said, "Be water, my friend," I wasn't offering a poetic platitude. I was revealing the deepest secret of mastery I had discovered. Water doesn't try to overcome obstacles through force. It adapts to them, flows around them, through them, over them. Water doesn't maintain a rigid form. It takes the shape of whatever contains it without losing its essential nature. Water doesn't resist pressure. It redistributes it, channels it, uses it. Look at how water responds to different environments. In a cup, it becomes the cup. In a bottle, it becomes the bottle. In a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Yet through all these transformations, water remains fundamentally itself. This is the paradox at the heart of true mastery. The more completely you can adapt to circumstances, the more faithfully you express your true nature. The more forms you can embody, the more formless you become. The more responses you can generate, the more spontaneous your action. First reflection, what am I avoiding? Each evening, identify one situation, conversation, or challenge you've been shying away from. Not because it's genuinely harmful, but because it triggers fear. Name this fear specifically, feel its presence in your body. Then commit to taking one small step toward this feared thing tomorrow. Second reflection, what evidence am I ignoring? Identify one area where doubt is holding you back, then deliberately recall 3 specific instances that contradict this doubt. Times when you showed capability, resilience, or growth in this area. Feel the truth of these memories in your body, not just your mind. Third reflection, what certainty am I clinging to? Identify one belief, method, or identity that you've become rigid about. Something you defend automatically without questioning. Ask yourself, what if the opposite were true? What might I learn if I temporarily set this certainty aside? Practice these reflections daily, and you begin to loosen the grip of your inner opponents. Not through force or suppression, but through awareness and gentle persistence, like water wearing away stone, not through violence, but through consistency. But I must warn you, this path of mastery isn't comfortable. It will demand more from you than any external challenge ever could. Because while physical opponents can only defeat your body, these inner opponents can defeat your spirit, your very capacity for growth and authentic expression. I learned this lesson painfully during the filming of Enter the Dragon. I was at the peak of my physical abilities, but internally I was in turmoil. The pressure was immense, not just to perform, but to represent my culture, my art, my philosophy. To prove that an Asian man could carry a Hollywood film. To live up to the expectations I had created. One night, after a particularly demanding day of shooting, I found myself alone in my hotel room, paralyzed by a familiar cycle of thoughts. Fear that I would fail, doubt that I deserved this opportunity, ego desperate to prove itself. Around and around these thoughts circled, draining my energy, clouding my focus. That night, I developed what I now call the circle of presence, a practice for breaking the cycle of negative thoughts and returning to centered awareness. It's a practice you can use anytime you find yourself caught in the grip of fear, doubt, or ego. Third, expand your awareness further to include your emotions, not analyzing them, not judging them, just acknowledging their presence as temporary weather patterns in your consciousness. Finally, rest in the spacious awareness that contains all these elements, breath, body, emotions, thoughts, without being limited to any of them. This is your true center, the place from which authentic action emerges. From this center, you can engage with your inner opponents, not as enemies to be destroyed, but as teachers offering valuable lessons. Fear shows you where growth awaits. Doubt highlights areas that need strengthening. Ego reveals attachments that limit your freedom. This shift in perspective is crucial. As long as you're fighting against yourself, you remain divided, fragmented, less than whole. True mastery comes not from defeating these aspects of yourself, but from integrating them, transforming their energy from destructive to constructive. I've spoken much about inner opponents, but there's another aspect of self-mastery equally important: recognizing and cultivating your inner allies. These are the natural strengths, qualities, and capacities that support your growth and authentic expression. Every person has unique inner allies, innate tendencies that, when recognized and developed, become powerful forces for mastery. For some, it's persistence. For others, creativity. For others still, compassion or courage or clarity. I discovered my own inner allies through a practice I call flow tracking. After any experience where I felt completely engaged, effective, and alive, what modern psychologists call a flow state, I would reflect on the qualities that had emerged naturally in that state, not the skills I had used, but the underlying attributes that had allowed those skills to express themselves fully. Through this practice, I identified my primary inner allies: adaptability, intensity, and intuitive understanding. When these qualities were active, I performed at my best, not just technically, but with a sense of rightness and completeness that transcended technique. Your inner allies are already within you, though perhaps dormant or underdeveloped. To discover them, pay attention to moments when action feels effortless, when you lose track of time, when you're fully engaged without straining. What qualities are present in those moments? Those are your allies. Once identified, these allies can be cultivated intentionally, not through forced effort, but through creating conditions that allow them to emerge and strengthen naturally. This cultivation is as important as combating your inner opponents, for mastery requires both removing obstacles and building capacity. True mastery isn't found in perfect technique or flawless performance. It's found in the ability to be completely yourself in any situation, to respond to life not from conditioned patterns or external expectations, but from your deepest authenticity. Such expression has a quality that's unmistakable, a directness, a presence, an aliveness that can't be faked or manufactured. It comes not from adding anything to yourself, but from removing everything that isn't authentically you. Like the sculptor who reveals the statue by cutting away the excess stone, you reveal your true self by cutting away the false. This is the journey I invite you to undertake. Not a journey of acquisition, but of reduction. Not of becoming something new, but of uncovering what has always been present. Not of victory over others, but of reconciliation with yourself. The path begins with a simple question, asked with complete honesty. Who am I beneath the roles I play, the expectations I carry, the identity I've constructed? When everything else is stripped away, what remains? Remember, the goal isn't to become perfect. The goal is to become real, to express yourself with such honesty and completeness that there's no separation between who you are and what you do. In that integration lies true power, true effectiveness, true mastery. I began this journey as a martial artist seeking physical perfection. I discovered that the highest art isn't perfecting techniques, but transcending them entirely. Moving beyond form into formlessness, beyond method into spontaneity, beyond control into freedom. This is available to you, whatever your field or focus. The principles of self-mastery apply equally to the business executive, the artist, the parent, the educator. For while our external paths differ, our inner journey is the same. From fragmentation to wholeness, from limitation to possibility, from conditioned reaction to authentic response. The greatest fight you'll ever face isn't against an external opponent. It's the fight to know yourself completely and express yourself honestly, to become like water, fluid, adaptable, powerful not through force, but through perfect alignment. True nature. I challenge you to begin this journey today, not tomorrow, not when conditions are perfect, but now, in this moment. Start with a single breath, a single question, a single step. The path of self-mastery unfolds one choice at a time. Face your fears not by denying them, but by acting despite them. Question your doubts not by suppressing them, but by gathering evidence against them. Transcend your ego not by destroying it, but by emptying it of rigid attachments. Practice the circle of presence daily, returning again and again to the centered awareness that is your true home. Ask the essential question: Who am I beyond all conditioning? And listen deeply for the answer that emerges not in words but in authentic action. Remember that mastery isn't a destination but a journey, one that continues to unfold throughout life. There is no final victory, no point of completion. There is only the ever-deepening capacity to express yourself honestly, completely, in harmony with the changing circumstances of your life. In the end, true mastery is not about controlling life, but about flowing with it. Not about perfecting yourself, but about expressing yourself. Not about becoming superhuman, but about becoming fully human, with all the vulnerability, uncertainty, and limitless potential that entails.